Hello and welcome back to the channel. Sam Richards here, classic physique competitor, and today we're going to be talking about coming off cycle, the dreaded period of time you're losing all your gains, you're softening up, all your muscles going to turn to fat. All those kind of myths, are they true? What's the reality of somebody coming off an anabolic cycle and going down to natural levels of testosterone? So what was my cycle and how long have I been off for? My cycle was actually a prep cycle. Now you may know that we ended prep early, but needless to say we still had a decent amount of time on anabolics, and at my peak I was using 300 milligrams of testosterone and anphate, 450 milligrams of primobolan, and we were then using 80 micrograms of clenbuterol per day and 15 milligrams of yohimbine per day. So it's a fairly moderate stack really when you sort of consider the contest prep stacks that you often see online, trend massed. Of course, all the orals, are usually recommended. Still enough to shut my shit down. And so how long have I been off for? I've been off for 9 weeks now, properly back at natural baseline levels. A lot has changed. It feels very different. It's a very different thing, bodybuilding under natural doses. And I'm going to delve a little bit into that and a little bit about how you can bridge the gap when you do come off a super physiological dose. Try and make it feel not quite so bad. So I'm going to throw up some updates of how things sort of progressed over the time from ending prep through till now at about 9 weeks out. This will be my latest check-in, which was from Monday, so a few days ago. But not much is changing at this point, to be honest. We're fairly consistent in the mid-190s. To give you an insight into how rapidly things change, my dose was obviously long esters, so there was a bit of an elongated time frame where it was still going to be super physiological within my body. I was still going to feel enhanced when it comes to the gym and everything. That lasted for probably 2 weeks where it was noticeable. Beyond that, probably a month to 6 weeks, until the point where I truly felt the challenges of natural dosing. The amount of time that I had to rest between sets was increased because I was fatiguing slightly earlier. My ability to recover between sessions was reduced, and I felt DOMS not because I was providing some unique new muscle stimulus, we were doing the same plan, but more so because my body had less capability to recover from that stimulus we're already doing. Strength is obviously a big part about coming off, and a lot of people worry about, if I hit a PB, will it just drop off straight away? And no, not at all. My opinion on this is that if you keep the same approach to training, keep the same mentality, and still go for that weight, chances are you'll still be able to lift it. The difference is progressive overload is going to be fairly non-existent in this period of time. All you're doing is you're fighting your body's desire to sort of regress and a slight weakening and less capability to shift the weight. Your best case scenario is pretty much maintaining the weight, and maybe at certain points you could squeeze in slight PBs, but to be honest, it's not really recommended when you're off cycle anyway. There's not much to gain. You're not going to be gaining a massive amount of muscle depending on what your definition of off cycle is. So you're best off minimizing the amount of heavy hard stress that could potentially lead to injury, because this is a time where you're probably more likely to incur stuff like injuries. I will say there are much more fluctuations when it comes to being on a natural dose. Now, I'll explain that briefly. I do not come off completely. I blast and cruise. That's the approach whereby you drop down to basically replacement levels, because coming off completely can be pretty harsh on your system. Restoring natural testosterone production is a lengthy process. It takes a toll on the body, and it does often lead to regression, albeit short term. Personally, with my ambition levels, it doesn't really make sense for me to do that, because also there's a suggestion that the more you sort of cycle on and off, the more you hammer your system, and the lower chance of full recovery at the end of it. So the better bet, counterproductively it may seem, but it seems to be the unanimous opinion, is the blast and cruise approach. So my cruise dose, which is what is meant to be replacement levels, is around 150 milligrams per week. To some people this would be high, to some people this would be low. It depends on your size, your experience, and your genetics, I suppose, for hormone production, as to whether this is right for you. And the only way to assess is through a blood test, and that's something that we've done this week. We will be giving you the results on, but Medichecks are taking their sweet ass time in giving me the results. I've got a bit of a medical crisis over the last couple of years. Not sure if you've realised. We should have those soon, and we can then assess and adjust going forward when we drop down to a cruise in future. But needless to say, still that does affect me. I'm going from 300 test to 150 test, dropping 450 milligrams of Primo. There's going to be a difference there. And there definitely was. It took maybe 6 to 8 weeks before the point whereby fluctuations started to play more of a part in my training. Mood was less stable. When you are on cycle, mood is fairly consistent, I feel. Not more drive, maybe more energy. I'm not sure really how to describe it. That meant that there are more factors affecting my sessions. My strength was obviously a fight, so some days when you're not feeling 100%, fighting that fight can be harder and harder, and sometimes you do just accept dropping the weight down slightly, or maybe you can't get the same amount of reps. So all of these things come into play and can mean that your experience being natural or being enhanced, can be vastly different. So my strength is stagnant, my energy's lower, my physique of course softened because of that, and not just because of that, but because of the diet as well. We can't negate the fact that I was on a prep and a deficit. I've moved to maintenance, then to maybe a slight surplus, and back to maintenance again. Now I'm eating more liberal food choices, so I'm going to be holding more water. I'm at a slightly higher body fat percentage, so all of these things are going to happen anyway. I don't feel like I've lost any muscle during this process. However, your physique will visually soften. There's the glycogen, which is sort of fed into the muscles when you are on cycle, which will obviously be lost, and the water weight. There's a lot of things at play here, which means that although you may be the same weight, you may not lose any muscle, you will still aesthetically look different off cycle, and that can be a mental challenge for a lot of people. And all along with this, as I mentioned, the mood front, your confidence will be lower. At the end of the day, you're not pumping yourself full of male hormones, which give you that inflated sense of self and drive and I guess tunnel vision almost when you are on cycle. Now there is a mentally addictive side to anabolics because of all of those reasons. It's not an addictive substance in the same way the drug would be, but you feel more assertive, you feel superhuman, you feel that dose running through your veins. There's a reason why the placebo effect is so pronounced within steroid use. A lot of kids are like, oh, I just pinned my first dose and I feel alpha, I hit a PB in the gym. It's like, no, you just weren't going for that PB because you weren't confident enough beforehand. It's placebo. Things don't work that quickly. And the mental triggers and the difference in the gym, the slight mood differences, it can really play on people's mind, especially people who jump into this world early, so haven't got that experience of natural training and how to manipulate their body off cycle, which is just as important. So yes, absolutely, people get addicted to the process. They push their time off down and down and down. They pump their cycles up and up because people are trying to maximize their time feeling this way, which is understandable, but a lot of these people are the same ones pushing doses and not really following safer use models. So when you combine those two factors, more time of exposure along with harsher exposure and more of it, that's not really a recipe for longevity. So what's the solution? Well, the safer use model in my eyes is a really good solution to this. The safer use model, to give you an idea, is basically an approach to anabolics whereby you minimize the amount of input you have of anabolics to maximize the output. So there will be critical doses whereby going above it is the point of diminishing returns. If you're running 300 testosterone, you feel great, you maximize results, you're getting marginally, different results to maybe if you were doubling that, but not by too much, and the side effect profile is low, you don't have to worry about estrogen. Then you take it to 350. Well, now you might need an AI, and that brings with it a host of other side effects and problems. So this is the point of maybe critical dosing for testosterone. You'll have this for all of your different compounds, and the cycle design is usually done in a way to avoid AI completely by avoiding high aromatizing compounds as well, and using stuff like primobolan, equipoise, which acts as a natural aromatase inhibitor. I'll say natural. It's basically just taking a smarter approach and actually thinking this through. How can I design this stack optimally to have to use the least amount of drugs, which is of course better for you in the long run, but also it reduces the focus on anabolics. There's a lot of focus now, especially in the kids who are entering the world of bodybuilding. It feels like they overemphasize the importance. Look at the amount of natty or not videos, the amount of what this person's taking videos, and the lack of genuine, interest in training stuff, and the mentality of shift heavy fucking weight, pay your dues. But people aren't interested in that. They want to know what they can take to skip that. And the safer use model reduces your focus because the effects are less dramatic. Let's face it, you're not optimizing everything. You're not going to go, okay, I want to get 100% results. You're saying, maybe I'll get 90% results, but it'll be 100% safer. Your focus on dose-dependent growth is much lower. You learn the importance of the other variables, how to manipulate them and optimize them. And then, you know, it forces you to sort of look beyond just the pharmaceutical assistance in order to manipulate, grow and progress, which is great for mentality. You're less bothered about coming off cycle because you know you can optimize everything else. You've got the knowledge and experience to do so. And the difference between being on and off will be so marginal that just won't be a depressing factor for you, at least. You know, you'll still notice it, but it won't be strong enough to make a massive negative impact on your life. Safer use involves more blood tests, which means that you're going to have a better track of where you are. You're able to generally jump back on when your bloods check out as ready. You know, when you're healthy back to 100%, that's when you recycle. You're not basing it off arbitrary numbers like time on, time off, or I need to be off for at least 12 weeks. You judge it based on the scientific medical facts of you as an individual. And that's the benefit of safer use. Yeah, sure, it's about, you know, using less and optimizing, but if you're in a safe, healthy position to start, there's no reason why you can't. So I'll typically spend probably 10 weeks off cycle. That'll probably be where we are before we launch into the off season. So it's comparable to how much I was on for, maybe a little bit less, but this will all depend on the blood test, which during filming this video I actually got through. So that will be the next video coming your way. I'll be able to see whether I'm ready personally to jump back on. You could be healthy and ready to go in 6 weeks. You could not be in 12. What's helped me deal with this? Well, supplements, making sure your health supplement stack is on point is going to massively make a difference. CoQ10, for example, is one supplement that I swear by, and I feel a difference almost as much as being on cycle versus off when I'm taking it versus not. Do not stop your health and on-cycle therapy supplements, especially if you're cruising. These things are still supporting your organs and they've still been through stress, so it's important to continue them off cycle. You will feel better for it. Cleaning up the diet is a great one because your diet dictates how you feel a lot, your mood and the stability of that. If you're eating chicken and rice for every meal, I guarantee you will feel better and more stable than if you are having junk food then having to get up early to train the next day. Using longer rests, adapting your training, understanding your recovery is going to be diminished. You just need to tailor your approach to your current circumstances and be a bit smarter about it. So that's a bit about, I guess, the realities of coming off cycle. You know, it's not great. It's going to be not as enjoyable as being on. That's obvious. You know, anabolics are strong, powerful and effective drugs which have multifold benefits, including mental and physical. So, you know, it's important not to overemphasize the importance of them. Still learn all the other stuff, which can mean that, you know, year round, you can have a good physique. You don't have to be one of those guys who takes 100 photos and a diet, and when you're on cycle, then you come off and you have to rehash the same shit for months on end, like plenty of the guys that I see on Instagram. You don't have to accept this is the end of your gains in your physique or your progress. You don't have to let it soften you up. All it takes is a little bit more work. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys. Blood result video is coming up next for you. Like and subscribe, click that bell to be notified when that's live, and I'll see you in the next one.